heroes!
And welcome to our Morning Throners podcast.
I'm Nelson.
I'm Jeff.
And I'm Kyle. And we're your Morning Throners.
And welcome back to another episode of your favorite Song of Ice and Fire podcast. We are your Morning Throners with Brienne 3. Gentlemen, how are we doing?
Great.
Yeah,
Kyle
I
got
feel
me
like...
heated. We had a heated conversation before the podcast, but Brienne's going to cool me down real quick. I love Brienne.
Shoot, Brienne's going to cool everybody down. This chapter sucks.
Oh, I was just about to say, I feel like I'm about to step on a landmine here, but like, I know it was long, Jeff, but
that's my biggest issue is it was fucking 27 pages.
I kind of dig her chapters, man. Like, this is kind of the books. Not the books that I like to read, but like these are like plot lines here that like is fun to me. I don't know, where it's like a lot of up in the air, and she's like meeting people. There's a lot of kind of feels like open ends here. I don't really know exactly where it's going.
I think if the book was maybe in her POV and you knew that your next chapter was going to be her tying up some ends, but like I don't even know when the next time you're gonna get to see her to tie these up. And it's just like, oh my gosh, Brienne, like get to the point. Like I don't need. We get so much backstory. Like it's so much backstory. Yeah. We've known Brienne for 2 books now, right?
Well, I think that's kind of part of the fun too, is to get some of this information on just like her hardships first off, and then also, I mean, I knew people liked Pod before. I didn't realize that this was how we were going to kind of get the insight into his life here too. So that's kind of fun to me, right? Like I don't know. I guess that's part of my new reader-ish thing where it's like kind of stuff unfolding that I don't know where it's heading. So I guess maybe that's why you're finding it a little more tedious to me. But
that's what I was going to say. Is I think part of this is like a lot of the stuff we learn about Brienne in this chapter is the first time we learn it. Like we kind of learned about this whole game that they kind of played with her, right? We learn more about it towards the end, so we'll save it for that. But like,
and we get it because we meet Hyle, which it makes sense to talk about that then. It makes sense to learn about Pod's backstory here. But I don't know, man. There was just a lot of words on these pages for this chapter. I can't be... Like, we went from book 1, where it was literally like 12 crisp pages, to now we need 23.
George is getting ballsy.
I think it might even been more than 23. It might have been more.
This is the longest one in this book, I think, so far, yeah.
He's getting full of himself.
I just can't wrap my head. Like, it was so crisp. Book 1, bop, 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 bop. And here we are, man. We're just kind of sludging through a Brienne chapter.
Guess what Brienne is doing, though?
It's going to take us an hour and a half once we get started just to do this non-spoiler because there's so much stuff. I did the notes. Like, my notes are lengthy.
I think this one will actually be pretty quick, though. We'll see.
What is she doing, Jeff?
And you've made this point before, Kyle.
The same shit she's been doing for 2 chapters.
She's wandering aimlessly across the countryside. So we're wandering aimlessly through her chapters. I know,
and I can't do it. I can't do it. This is it's sometimes what like I get caught doing in the office. Like we got some people that like just bop bop bop. They just like switch task to task, and I'm like, I can't do this. I need to be A B C D. And she's just not with it for me. But that is what it is. I digress.
I mean, she's still got a ABCD task, right? Like she's still going down the line here, but she's just kind of directionless. So
I know she doesn't have an easy task ahead of her, but I do not enjoy.
All right, we know Jeff. We know Jamie wouldn't send Jeff. That's all I gotta say.
Hold on, I'll say one more thing. The Dunk and Egg novellas. We compare this to. The Dunk and Egg novella was 100 pages and was a quicker, better read than this chapter here.
I will say the other thing. So let's give the quick synopsis. I'll do that. So basically, we get to Maidenpool. She's been going town to town. The last 2 Brienne chapters, we were at Rosby, then we were at Duskendale. Now we're at Maidenpool. We're here because we heard from a brother in the last town at Duskendale that there's a man who said he fooled a fool. His name's Nimble Dick, so that's why we're here. He's in a place called the Stinking Goose. But in this chapter, we get to Maidenpool. Like somebody said, we meet this guy, Sir Hyle Hunt, who Brienne has some history with. He basically makes Brienne go talk to Lord Randall Tarley, which I think that's a cool part of this chapter because Randall's a character that we've heard a lot about.
There we go.
But we've never seen in person. So talk to Randall. Then we get to the Stinking Goose, get to meet with Nimble Dick and kind of set up where Brienne's headed to next. So that's the quick synopsis for it. And it starts heading on the road. Basically, we get a quick recap of the travel from Duskendale to Maidenpool, and with that, we get some kind of early in the chapter. We get some pod background too, not just Brienne background.
All right, so Brienne and Pod are walking through where she thinks she might have been with Sir Cleos and Jaime. She's kind of having flashbacks, but then everything kind of looks the same, so she doubts herself. And Pod's like, "Hey, what are we doing here? What are we looking for?"
Yeah.
And
She says ghosts.
She says that a couple times.
Yeah, a couple times she thinks ghosts, basically people that are dead. A cool thing, what does Podrick call Brienne? Now that they're like buddies.
Lady, sir.
My lady?
My
sir?
lady,
Sir?
sir.
My lady? Yeah, he
Sir,
never
my
knows.
lady?
Either way.
I
He doesn't
mean,
know.
we didn't get her correcting him ever, so I mean, like that's kind of on her, right?
Yeah, she didn't pick one.
She probably, yeah, I'm going to assume she did it a couple times. Like, I'm not a knight. And then she's just like, keep saying sir. It's like, all right, fuck
Whatever.
off.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I mean,
Keep doing it.
honestly, do we know that what would a female knight be called? Would it be a sir?
I don't think it.
Madam
Or is
Brienne?
that right? Yeah.
I
So,
mean, I just think
it-
that's just not a thing that can happen. I don't know.
Well, exactly. I mean, that's really what this whole chapter is
Yeah,
about, anyway.
exactly.
So, yeah, go ahead. They come upon some people, right?
Before
It's
that, she's like, yo, be quiet. Like, there still might be outlaws. And she just thinks that he's not truly ready for a fight because he's been poorly trained.
Yeah, I think this is her thinking back to kind of when they first teamed up.
Yeah.
He did stab. Was it Mandon Moore?
Yeah, exactly. Save Tyrion in the battle.
Which she's like, yo, okay, you fought on the black water. Like, okay, they must have thought you were bullshit, which is kind of here. But quick pod backstory, I have it kind of lined out quickly. Nelson,
wanna hit
I'm
it?
sure, has details. He comes from a lesser Payne house, which falls under Lannister bloodline somehow.
They're Bannermen. Yeah.
Okay, I thought there was like a lesser lion bloodline too.
I don't think so.
Dad died in the Greyjoy Rebellion. Mom then left him for a singer that got her pregnant, and he stayed then with cousin Cedric, who treated him more like a servant than a squire. And then he ended up squiring for a fat knight, Lormer, who stayed by the food cart. He got caught for stealing a ham.
Why? Why do we switch from Cedric to Lormer?
Cedric died.
Cedric died. I think it was in... He says in the Riverlands fighting for Tywin.
Yeah, with Tywin, I think, yeah.
The only major battle I think we hear about, maybe I'm just forgetting because it's the only one we see, is the one where Tyrion fought in at the Green Fork.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if this was where he died.
So Pod would have been at the Green Fork?
Potentially.
I mean, that's kind
yeah.
of where he showed up with Tyrion too, almost right after that, right?
Tyrion didn't get
forget.
Podrick till he was back in the city, which would make
Okay.
sense because he gets put with a different guy who stays with the army, basically, right? So he goes
Okay. I thought it. Yeah. Okay.
from Cedric to Lormer the Belly, which is where
But
Jeff...
he was still with. Oh, okay, so he was with the Lannisters the whole time, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lormer stole a ham. Podrick ate that ham, so he should have been hung too. But Sir Kevin took him because of his name, or Tywin let him go because of his name. Kevin took him under his wing, then passed him on to Tyrion, and Tyrion actually did start getting him trained by
Sanagar.
Sanagar. Aaron Sanagar.
Aaron
So,
Sanagar, and but he died in the bread rights.
just, real quick, back on the timeline. I checked. So when he was serving...
Timeline doesn't matter.
When Pod was serving with Lormer the Belly, Lormer was under Leo Lefford's contingent, who's another bannerman of Tywin. But Leo Lefford died at the Battle of the Stone Mill, where Edmure, Cat's brother, fought along the rivers right when he kind of wasn't supposed to.
Oh yeah.
Lefford died there, so Podrick was serving for him, which means so his time with Lormer the Belly must have been before that battle, right? So the timeline we're on kind of makes sense. He probably switches from Cedric Payne to Lormer the Belly at the Green Fork, is probably with Lord Leo Lefford for a little while after that, and then once the ham incident happens, did you get to this part, Jeff? He goes back to Kevin.
Yep.
And Kevin gives him. Kevin gives him to Tyrion.
I quickly said that.
So I did want to we talked about the Blackwater battle in the Blackwater briefly, but they leave him alone because he looked kind of unassuming, right? And that was what she said about how she thought he survived. I think there's probably something to that, right? Like Mandon Moore probably didn't think anything of this dude, and he just kind of showed up. He got a lucky stab in, and
He's
then
just
he
a little
left.
kid. Yeah.
So yeah,
I don't even know. In Mandon, if Mandon had such a target for Tyrion, and I don't
he's
know,
like tunnel
this is
visioned.
me, the most war I fought is in what was that game we played, Chivalry 2.
Yeah.
You can only fight the person in front of you, but
Yeah.
if you had to have a high value target, maybe you're a little bit more locked in on that guy.
Well, I mean, also Mandon was on the same side as Tyrion and Pod, so Pod
true.
is not thought of as an enemy to Man. I mean, no one's thought
true,
of
true.
as an
Yeah.
enemy to Mandon, right? That was kind of like a backstabbing. So
He is still a squire, though. You kind of got to wipe out that witness, I'd say. But I know what you're saying. He wasn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
That's a good point. But yeah.
It is a...
So Brienne starts training him. That's
Yes.
really where it comes to here, right? Like she's like, yeah, he's no good with the sword. So during their travels, she's kind of training him. She's
With a stick.
She's trying to get rid of him at first, and he's like, no, I got to go with you. We got to find Tyrion. Blah blah blah. Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. She starts whacking him with sticks.
Yeah. What's kind of cool. She's like, you don't want to stay with me. You're going to go to bed sore and bruised every night. You don't want that.
Yeah.
And he's like, I do want that. Well, I don't, but I want what comes from that.
I do,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And she's trying to, it's kind of like a trap, right? Like, all right, like I'll let you follow, but it's going to suck. Like I'm going to make your life hell so that you quit. That's what she was really trying to do. But along the way, he's enjoying it. And she's like, all right, he says he didn't know where Sansa was at. He's still kind of like, oh, she's with Tyrion. That's why I'm with you. And, she's like, please be the secret key to finding this thing, because I'm
who knows what this
I
guy
got
heard
nothing.
or might know, or
or
be
even
able to
like
unlock.
recognize her too. Like he's actually seen her. I talk about that all the time. Like
It's a great point. Brienne doesn't know what a chest looks like. Yeah, but Pod does.
so, they come up on a man and a woman pulling a cart. That's gotta suck, especially through some mud. They kind of like, yay, we're not gonna kill you. We're not outlaws. They lost their ox to the wolves. That guy didn't come back. He got ate. I'm assuming they lost their daughter to the other wolves.
I think it's
they're
all the
both to
same.
wolves.
Yeah, I think it's all to the Starks. I think it's meant to be like when you first read it, you think he's talking about the wolves because his ox was taken off. He's like, but they took my daughter off too, but she did come back.
Yeah, I thought I was going to, because there are the wolves in this deal.
Yeah.
Well, he says the wolves and the lions later, and doesn't capitalize any of them, and like says there's something else. There's a third thing, but anyway, you could tell that he was talking about the Starks and the Lannisters.
Yeah.
So okay. Anyway, what were you gonna say?
I think it's weird. Brienne keeps referring to this woman as his wife, but he says right here the daughter came back, and she also knows that the woman is 20 years younger than him, and even the guards
This could
say
be
like
the
she's
daughter.
too young for you. So I'm like, isn't it more likely this is the daughter, not the wife? And Brienne just keeps thinking wife, but
wouldn't he have said then like, oh, I lost her, but she came back? Other than
he did. Well, he didn't say she came back. He's like,
That's
my
what I'm
daughter
saying,
came back,
like-
and then Brienne basically says like the woman didn't say anything. She just kept her head down the whole time. So it's like what? So
Yeah, it's suspicious, but I don't think it was his daughter.
I don't think it really matters one way or the other, but I just
Well,
thought it
hang
was weird.
on. The quote is they took off our daughter,
Our daughter. Okay, that's fair.
which implies him and
context
hers.
clues.
Yeah,
So, I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not gonna argue anymore.
Maybe the wife's the one that got left back at the farm.
Who knows?
No, this doesn't matter. Let's move on.
But so you mentioned she's not speaking, but she's definitely looking at Brienne pretty fucking weird, which most women do.
Everybody, pretty much. Yeah.
Everybody pretty much does.
Yeah, Brienne's seen it before.
And they're giving Brienne the news that they've heard about Maidenpool. Randall's there. He's a hard man, braver than Mooton. He's been kind of rebuilding, and he's been helping with the outlaw problem, shortening them their heads with
He's
his.
doing good work. Tarly's doing work in Maidenpool.
Good work?
area.
I think we can wait until
We can
later to
talk
say
about
good
that
Well,
later.
work.
I mean, passing judgment, we
Doing
all
work.
know kind of where judgment can be different in different people's eyes, Nelson and Kyle. But rebuilding, looks pretty solid for a community.
True, and I think in the Sam chapter, John was doing something similar. That's what that made me think of. Is John was putting everyone to work, and everyone's complaining about how hard they were being worked. To John, like rebuilding the stair and stuff like that, right in the Sam chapter.
I would remember, but that was probably a year ago.
And here, Randall's putting people to work because he doesn't believe in idle men, because then they get into trouble, basically.
But that's
Drinking
true.
and
That is
dicing
true,
and
too.
fucking, right? I think as somebody says later.
Yeah. The weird thing I think about this part, once you read the whole chapter, is he says, "Oh, the outlaw. He's been helping with the outlaw problem and shortening their heads with his great sword, Heartsbane." And he does have his cool sword, Heartsbane, later when we see him. But he also has like 20 gallows. Like we're hanging cats. We're not snipping heads. So like, why do you have the cool?
Maybe we're hanging them and then snipping heads.
I mean, what's the point of that?
Well,
Just
I
a
mean, you
sign.
don't know what he's doing to the outlaws. These were common folks in town getting hung.
Sure, but same principle,
From
right?
what we'd seen. Maybe he goes out and fights outlaw bands. You know, some of that stuff is definitely performative, right? So like that's like part of it is to make an example. So I don't know. Who knows?
If you just have a big head snippy sword, you think you'd want to use it as much as possible, right? But
Yeah.
again,
mean-
it doesn't really matter.
It'd be like if you had a lightsaber. Would you pull out your would you pull out your blaster if you had a lightsaber?
When you're a hammer, the whole world's a nail.
Yep. So she was like, you know what? I didn't see that many outlaws on my way up here. If they were, they scurried into the wood pretty quickly. And Tarly's even got like checkpoints along the road where she ran into one, and they surrounded her, questioned her, and then they warned her that, watch out, the hounds run around raping girls with 100 men, so be careful.
And they're cutting off all the wenches' teats as trophies.
When was that from? That was from a different chapter.
That's what they'd say
No, that
right
was
here.
this chapter.
Really?
Right here.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The
you're
hound
right,
has
I
crossed the
didn't
trident
realize.
with 100 outlaws, and it said they're raping every wench they come upon and cutting off their teats for trophies.
Now, there's a part here, right here,
Well-
where she's like, I don't want to run into Tarly, right? Because I owe him a debt. Is that...
Yeah.
Yeah, and we kind of learn about that later.
Do we?
Well, she was worried about before, I thought. She was like, I can't see Randall. I can't see Tarly. I got to be hidden.
Right.
This was like a chapter or two ago, I thought.
Yeah,
She's like,
yeah,
fuck,
yeah.
I got to go to Maidenpool. That's Tarly's place. Tarly hates me. He's
Yep.
going to kill me for Renly.
Well, yeah, and here she says she knew that she knew Randall from being in the host with Renly's host together, and though she didn't like him, she couldn't forget the debt she owed him. Is the part that Jeff's talking about.
Okay.
The one thing that we did skip by real quick is when they're talking about who she saw on the road. She mentions that they didn't see any outlaws, like you said, but they did see one big group of like 200, like 40, like preachers, or like one septon
Yeah.
with like
Bearded
40
septon, yeah.
followers. So
Which she met one earlier, too, right? So it's another group of people, preachers.
yeah, and later when Randall is dispelling judgment, one of the things he's dispelling judgment on is a person who looted from an abandoned sept. Which, and again, like I think I mentioned this before, like we saw like 3 or 4, I think, septs getting attacked on Arya's travels and all these different people we've seen throughout the Riverlands, right? So,
I mean, you played Indiana Jones. You know how the good loot's kept in the church. You know
it's
that.
true. Yeah,
They do have a lot of
a lot of valuables in the church.
relics as well. Yeah.
Some of them.
But yeah, so you're right about this whole Randall thing. I didn't realize the debt that she was talking about here is most likely the debt she owed him for actually looking out for her and
Well,
putting a stop to the game.
Exactly. He's the one that ends the game. That's probably
Yeah,
what she's
because
referring to.
I thought she was scared of Tarly, so I misinterpreted all this. I thought she was scared because of the whole, like I said, the Renly thing. I think I just kind of went through all that where I thought she was wanted, yada yada yada, but really it's more of like shit. I owe this asshole something
I think
because
it's
he
both.
did something nice for me.
I think it's equally
Okay.
both, and she would probably be more scared about the first one than the second one if she didn't have this letter from Tommen.
Okay.
Right? Like if she did,
Yeah.
like just think about what would happen in the chapter if she didn't have it. She probably would have been like stripped of all her mail and sent back to Tarth.
Definitely helped to
potentially,
have
right?
that on her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So like he was about to do that, and she's like, "No, you can't. I have official business, right? I have Tommen's scribble."
Well, let's get there
So-
because I don't remember that. Yep, like that.
Here is the
so-
quote that one of you guys was talking about earlier. The man spat when she told him. Oh, she passed on the warning about the hound to the farmer because she had heard this from, I think, the Septon, maybe. And the man spat, and he's like, dogs and wolves and lions, may the others take them all. So, yeah, exactly. It's kind of what you were saying. Probably implies wolves are the Starks, not the wolves.
Yeah. I was hoping it was both the big wolf pack that we saw.
We haven't
earlier.
heard about
what I
that in a while.
Yeah, yeah. Nymeria, maybe.
So then she gives him her question again. Do you see a maid of 10 and 3?
Yeah.
Nope, no maids, foul or pretty, I guess. Fair or foul
Yep.
is what he said. And then, but Mooton's daughter is one for now. We're going to his wedding. We're providing the eggs.
Yeah. The Mooton daughter is marrying Dickon Tarly. There was another Mooton who they're like, the old Mooton wouldn't have done this. He was bold as brass, but Robert killed him. We've heard about this. That was in the Battle of the Bells.
But this Lord Mooton just sat behind his castle, right?
Yeah, he's kind of timid.
The whole war of the Five Kings.
Yeah, and like even now, there's a part again like when with the whole Randall thing, like when one of Mooton's men is the one being like accused. At one point, he like looks to Mooton, like Lord Mooton, for like help, and he says like he's like ship like off looking at ships, like doesn't give a fuck. Like he's like Randall's in charge here. I don't want anything to do with this. Pretty
And
much.
the only place that there's Mooton flags in the whole building or the whole town is on the castle too, right? Like
Yeah.
that's kind of another thing I think is like it's just showing
That's
that
where
they're
you're in charge. Everywhere else, we're in
confined in
charge.
there,
Yeah.
So we do learn something new about Brienne here is that she was once betrothed, and sounds like she was going through with it. We knew she was trying to get betrothed, right? Like she met a bunch of guys, but
Well, yeah, and she fought them all or something, right? And like fought the old man and stuff. I think we heard some stories of
Yeah.
the betrothment, but not specifically this one.
it sounds like this might have been the first one, and it was probably like cool after this
Yeah.
guy. She was out, and like, all right, I gotta fight. I gotta learn how to fight now.
Yeah, so she was 7 when for this first betrothal. It was one of Bryce Caron's sons. He was 3 years older, but yeah, he died, right?
from the sickness.
And this one didn't sound like she resented it as much as the other ones, right? Like this one was just two kids. They kind of got along. She does realize how much different her life would have been, though, had that not happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, he got sick and died, and then she kind of got tossed around the rest of the way here and forced onto a couple other dudes, right?
I gotta chop them up.
This is a really relatable thought for me right here. This last thought for Brienne here, where she's like, it always made her sad to think of like that life that could have been, like where she had like children and stuff. But also it kind of made her relieved. I'm in this situation where a lot of my friends I went to college with are married with children right now, and I'm not. And a lot of times, like, there's a lot of cool parts that, like, when Jeff talks about, like, having his, like, stuff that happens with his baby when his baby walks for the first time and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. But then I'm also like, damn, I don't think I could take care of a baby, though. Like, that's also a lot of work. So I totally get this feeling that Brienne's kind of having right now.
Bittersweet.
Maybe one day for both of us, Brienne.
So we come up on Maidenpool. They get to the gauge. The guy's like, what the fuck are you doing here? The farmer's like, I'm bringing the eggs to the wedding. The dude's like, you're bringing an egg to me. I want a fried egg right now. Throw that shit up here.
But he's like, motherfucker, I got like, this is like official or not royal business, but lord business, right? Like, I'm here to try and help Mooten. And these guys, they're not Mooten's men, right? That's really what it comes down to.
You can't have our eggs.
Yeah, well, I mean, the marriage is between Mooten and Tarly, though. So,
oh, is it? Oh, yeah, you're right. So I guess you're right. I guess that Randall would probably not be too cool with this either.
Yeah, I think the whole thing is, though, they could take his eggs and then not let him in, and then how would Randall know? Is like, yeah.
Oh,
so
yeah, for sure.
They're just being bullies.
But yeah, exactly. The typical asshole guards.
Yeah. So there's 12 of them. She mentions some sigils. She sees 2 people with centaurs. That's House Caswell. She sees a thunderbolt. That's House Leggood. Then we see these 2 sigils, a blue beetle and a green arrow. That sound familiar to any of you guys?
Yeah, the Blue Beetle and the Green Arrow. They're actual superheroes.
Are 2 DC superheroes, and George made these houses sigils just based on DC superheroes.
I didn't know the Blue Beetle was.
He's a big nerd. I think that there's a movie for him now. Maybe came out a few years
ago. They're all awful. Speaking of, on my flight, I watched The Dark Knight again. Just never gets old. I had everything downloaded to my iPad, and then I did like the in-flight free entertainment, and there it is, just staring me in the face. I'm like, well,
it's a sign.
Play.
And the last one is a sergeant here. He has a peacock. That's House Sarret. We've heard of this recently because one of the people that Asha's uncle Roderick is related to. Remember, there was a bunch of like Harlaws that had other sigils because they were like cousins or whatever. One of them was a scythe with a peacock because he was splitting his father and mother's sigils on his. So doesn't really matter. Just we heard of the peacock sigil before. So.
Alrighty. So, dude's also like, I'm taking that egg and I'm going to take your girl. Send her up here. And the dudes start working on it, right? Like,
they grab her and are pulling her
over.
That's
wild. That's crazy to me, Kyle. Yeah. They should be fired from their gauge.
And the husband doing nothing.
I mean, what are you going to do? That's like, I mean, this guy.
Brienne pulls her fucking sword.
Yes, he didn't.
Do you think this dude has a sword?
The dude has a cart. He can start throwing eggs.
That he's been pulling for the past how many miles, right? Like, I mean, this dude is probably some old, broken down dude. Like, and these are guys with swords, and he's literally just been through war. His whole family's already destroyed. Like, I don't know, man. I like this guy's. Like, what do you expect him to do here?
Yeah,
it's like, oh man, what was right back to Batman. Batman Begins when Liam Neeson is like, no, it was your father's fault. Your father failed to act. And Bruce was like, he had a gun. But not in the Batman voice.
But not in the
And Batman Liam's like, would that have stopped you? And I had training. And,
I had training.
But that's just whatever.
Okay, Brienne is in the situation.
Brienne has a gun, though.
Yeah, Brienne has a gun. Brienne has training.
Yeah, exactly.
Brienne has training, and she had a gun. So
the guards have a gun. Up. Brienne has training.
And
the farmer doesn't. The farmer's Bruce Wayne's dad. Brienne is Bruce Wayne.
All right. So Brienne steps up and then out, and she's probably gonna 5v1 it, which 5v2, 12v2
it. All right. And they have spears to her like neck. It's not even like going to be a sword fight. She's literally just like surrounded by spears. It's like one of those.
Got to get in there tight. Got in there tight.
Not good.
Yeah,
not good for sure. But here comes old Sir Hyle stepping out of the gate. I don't know what you call it.
Yeah.
Well, she says pretty loud, right? She's like, Mr. Tarley or Lord Tarley would not be too pumped with a bunch of rapers, right?
Yeah, they're like, what Lord Tarley does with outlaws? And she's like, I know what Lord Randall Tarley does with rapers, hoping that like the name drop would scare him, but it doesn't. And they're like, yeah, we don't care. Like, and she's like, and once they surround her, like, oh, what was that you were saying about what Randall does with? And then Hyle shows in and cuts him off. It's like, oh, with rapers he gelds them, and with thieves he cuts off a finger,
sends him to the wall.
Or sends them to the wall. Yep. Let her go, boys. And for Brienne, it was basically like his voice was a punch in her stomach. His face was a blade in her bowels.
Not this fucking guy again. Which I thought we would have got. I guess it's kind of cool that we didn't get his story on it right away. She kind of got led along.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, I knew this, like you kind of knew what happened, right? Like, you knew it had something to do with her being a lady and this dude being a prick about it.
For sure.
that was more of it.
And I've read it before, obviously, but
yeah.
I didn't remember if it was a hometown thing or on camp or just anything, but
I think Hyle's an interesting character. Like, the game I'm jumping ahead a little bit. The game they play on Brienne is like pretty fucked up, but like, there's shit I've done in like when I was like in high school that looking back on, I'm like, damn, that was kind of fucked up. The shit like that prank I pulled like was more of just being a dickhead than a prank or whatever, right?
I mean, you definitely are a kid and you make mistakes for sure that you can grow out of and realize that were problems.
And I'm not trying to give Hyle Hunt and like these other guys an out, but like there's definitely been things that like you did in the moment thinking it was a joke and then realizing like in hindsight like that was at someone else's.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is a more severe case of shit. What's the movie? Freddie Prinze Jr. He takes the girl to prom.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, it's a classic rom-com.
I don't know who Freddie Prinze Jr. is.
Yes, you do.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Is there's a whole entire genre of 90s movies of this, essentially, where it was you get the ugly chick, you take her to prom, and then you make her pretty, right? That's like literally an entire...
Take the ugly girl to prom.
Just Googling this. I did
there's
not
so
know
many
that.
of them.
I'm not a rom-com connoisseur, but...
it is She's All That. Freddie Prinze Jr. one was in the live-action Scooby-Doo. He was Fred.
Yeah, you don't know who Freddie Prinze... Oh, well, I guess that's my age.
If you didn't watch the live-action Scooby-Doo, go get off this podcast right now, because the live-action Scooby-Doo was a great show. But yeah, it's basically She's All That, but it's worse because obviously they're trying to, like, diddle her.
Yeah, the end of it is definitely sexual assault, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, she could have consented, but then you're like, it's for money. But
yeah, not to those.
That makes it pretty
not
dirty.
to the situation exactly. So
yeah, I know who that guy is.
Yeah,
you know who Freddie Prinze Jr. is.
Yeah, I looked it up. I know who he is. I think I only know from the Scooby-Doo movie though.
What I was going to say though is this dude doesn't seem too remorseful.
He was in the 90s and like early 80s.
Yeah, he's more in my era. I know who he is, but
that's a good point, Kyle. Yeah. He does not seem too remorseful.
Yeah, so I don't know. That's fair, Nelson, what you're saying, but this dude doesn't seem like he's like, I'm still so sorry about what happened or anything, right? Like, he's just like, hey, you're not going to thank me.
He like half apologizes later too. He's like, we were just playing around, which maybe you were, maybe it was like in a little like giggle, but when it spreads like wildfire, Game of Thrones word.
Yeah, exactly.
Then it becomes so much worse, and you can't even backpedal out of it.
And we learn when she thinks about this later, we learn that he is one of the three that like conceived the game.
Started it.
Like a lot of people like joined in, but he was like one of the originals. So
man, fuck you, right? Like she's allowed to hate him.
Exactly, which again explains like why when he first shows up, his voice was a punch in her stomach, his face was a blade in her bowels. Like this fucking guy, really. And it probably even worse that he's acting like nothing ever happens. Like, oh, what's up?
He's still being even a dick, though.
Oh, and he's a dick. He's like, she's ugly. Like she's uglier.
Calling her a wench, a wenchman, like a sword wenchman.
She's as mean as she is ugly, and there's no one ugly except Piss Pot.
Yeah,
you should be on the ugly horse because you're ugly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Stoop kid never leaves a stoop. Ugly girl never leaves an ugly horse.
Yeah, he's definitely not remorseful.
I think the dagger that really twisted in her ribs though was when the farmer called him a true knight.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, they talk about Renly here a little bit too, right? He's like, this is the woman who slew Renly, and they're like, well, shouldn't we arrest her then?
Take her in there? And you're like, what? She killed, like, you should be celebrating her. She killed the Traitor King.
He's like, we've switched kings since then. Some of us twice, right? And there's because some went Stannis, Tommen, and some went straight to Tommen. I guess it was Joffrey at the time, but yeah. So yeah, and then when they're going through exactly like what you guys said, the farmer's like, you're a true knight, which that's our like Sansa term, right? For like the storybook knight, and like Brienne literally just pulled her sword against 12 men,
12v2. 12v1
to stick up for you and your wife, and Hyle Hunt comes in here just because he has command, has the authority, like yes, he did do the good deed, but he didn't do it in a very chivalrous manner. He's calling Brienne ugly the entire time, so it's like
he's a dick. So he also says "come wife" at the end of that sentence.
Okay, damn, I missed that.
But no, like it's this is pretty much what this chapter is for Brienne, is her just seeing all these fucking knights around her that are just awful.
It's kind of like her going back to her high school reunion too, right? Like she's kind of doing her thing, and maybe it was being cool, and then you're like, oh shit, I got to go back to these people.
Yep.
He also gives us a little hint that he is stuck watching the gate because of her. So
for sure, this is definitely punishment.
You're kind of like, oh, what the fuck? Like what did happen there? Like how? So again, we find out because he started the bet, he then got reprimanded to gate duty because of it.
Yep.
All right. Going to the Stinging Goose. I can take you there. No, fuck you. I don't want you to take me there. And he's like, all right, but I got to take you to Lord Tarley first. So,
well, at one point he's like, are you going to thank me for what I did for you at the gate? And she's like, one day I'll thank you in a melee. And he's like, oh, the way you did Red Ronnet, which is, again, I think we talked about this in the last Brienne chapter. She thinks about this guy who showed up, basically had a rose. She had some words to say and thinks that she was like too nervous to like get him out. It's kind of why when she was like sympathizing with Pod. We don't hear the end of that story, but it's implied that it didn't go well. And then I think when we read that, I had reminded you guys that when Kat first gets to Bitterbridge and she like shows up, what she sees is Brienne beating the shit out of this guy, Red Ronnet, in a melee. So here she's telling Hyle, you're gonna get yours too. Or no, she's like, Hyle, I'm gonna fight you in a melee one day. And Hyle's like, I know what happens when you fight people in melees. Yeah,
well, the way you fucked that guy up.
Exactly.
It's pretty much what he said.
Yep. All right. So she looks around. Soldiers were rebuilding the town pretty good, right? A lot of spots that were messed up.
Kind of glossing over that. The Hound keeps getting mentioned as being alive.
That's true. Hyle says his cousin is out hunting down the Hound.
Yep.
Yeah, and doubtless will come back with his head. Like no doubt this guy's gonna finish this. And earlier you talked about the Hound crossing the Trident with 100 men. We were with the Hound when he crossed the Trident once. Definitely not 100 men. Right,
just Arya, right?
Yeah,
he did come up to the war tent, but then it was just Arya, right? Like,
But what I was gonna say then is, but we do think now that he's back with Barristan potentially. That was the last we heard, I think.
Not Barristan, Beric.
Beric
from Cersei, we heard that he might be with Beric, I think, and we also heard that he sacked this town called Saltpans.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe they're talking.
And he was raping people with the wolf head or the dog helmet.
Yeah, and that's kind of similar to what they're saying here. He's just not good for wenches or maids.
I guess that's kind of what I'm getting at. Is it's kind of the same. He's still the same story is what we're hearing. Go ahead.
All right, so soldiers were rebuilding the town. I didn't have much else, but she takes notice that they were doing pretty good work, and we mentioned Tarley likes to put them to work instead of letting them fuck around.
At one point, when she basically says, "I didn't kill Renly; it was sorcery," Hyle almost says, like, I know, or at least he says he knows. Or at the gates, he had accused her of killing the kings at Renly's Rainbow Guard. And here it seems like he's at least admitting that he knows she didn't kill them because he doesn't think she could anyway.
Enough. Yeah,
I don't know if it's true because she did fight them. Right, they attacked her when they saw her dead with Renly. She just didn't. I think she didn't kill them. She basically held them off.
Yeah, so it says the Knight of Flowers carved up the Rainbow Guard. On a good day, you might have been able to kill Aemon. He was a rash fighter. Royce, though, no way.
I guess the reason I thought this was interesting because every time I've read these books, I've always kind of put Brienne as like a top 5 fighter, and the more I'm reading like really closely through on this read through, like obviously she can hold her own, right? But is she a top 5? I don't know, right? Like
the question is like
right here.
If she was 1v1 against a healthy Jaime, she's probably L. 1v1 against Loras. I mean, Loras beat these two, right?
Well, she beat Loras in a melee. That's a great point. She beat Loras in a melee when Kat was at Bitterbridge. That's a great point. And Loras is probably a top 5. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she is better than I'm giving
What I was also going to say as well here, Nelson, is I think you're putting a lot of stock into things that these dudes that have shown they don't respect her are saying about her too.
I put the most thought into the fact that when she thinks about her fight with Jamie, how Jamie was malnourished in a prison for 6 months and chained, and she could barely keep up with it.
She's also very hard on herself as well, right? Like I think you kind of have to put some of these lenses or filters on these thoughts as well. Like this dude fucking hates women fighting. Right?
True,
like
and that's
very
why
clear.
Was that a Jamie POV too? The fight was through Jamie.
Yeah, because we didn't get Brienne POVs till this one.
Okay,
but she's thought about.
Yeah.
She has thought about that.
I mean, Jamie was like, okay, like this girl can. Jamie was like, this girl could fight, but I think he was probably like, I mean, in a cocky Jamie way.
Yeah, that's the other.
If I was healthy, I would have sliced her.
Well, if my hands weren't chained together. Right, his hands are.
That's true, and he had been in a prison for 6 months. And I think when Brienne has thought back, she has thought like Jamie would have fucked me up if he wasn't malnourished.
I know, but she's humble. So
true. And to your point, I put way more like credence into what we see. We saw that fight; it was pretty close. But we also, to Jeff's point, saw her beat Loras, and Loras is a top fighter. So yeah, I think we don't need to talk about it here. But yeah, I just thought that was an interesting comment by him.
So we're not going to the castle. We're going to a busy harbor where Tarly has a nice platform built. 20 nooses lined up. Nelson mentioned that a little bit earlier. Lord Mooten with him, and they're giving the justice to the crew.
Four corpses swinging off these nooses as well, right? Like so, this isn't just for complete show. Well, it's for show.
One
but
fresh
he's serious
one,
about the
old
nooses.
Ones.
Yeah.
And quick, I don't know how quick you want to go or not. The first guy was a thief, stole from the sept. Yeah. So instead of 1 finger, he gave 7 for the 7 gods. Then a baker came up.
Hang on, I thought this was interesting. He has to lose 7 fingers, but he gets to keep both his thumbs. Would you even want to keep both your thumbs if you were losing 7 fingers?
You need an opposing.
Yeah, you want to have this. Right?
Yeah, but if you're losing 7 though, that means one of your hands is only going to have a thumb.
Yeah, you'd be kind of.
I feel like a hand with only a finger is better than a hand with only a thumb, or a hand with no fingers and another hand with 3 is probably the best. Like if I had to lose 7, I'd probably go 3 on one side.
I mean, I'm reading with just those 3 right now. I'm just a superior athlete, maybe.
Jeff just has his fingers curled. It's not a video podcast, but Jeff has the fingers that are missing curled up.
I could drink my cup.
I think if I had to lose 7, I would choose 3 on one hand. I would probably keep middle, pointer, and thumb on one hand.
Let me do my math. 4 and 3.
Kyle, think about it.
I mean, I'm not picking my favorite fingers, man. That's not how this works. You can't do that. I need them all. I like all 10 of them.
All right. So next comes up a baker who was putting sawdust in his flour. He needs to pay the price, 50 silvers or lashes for everyone who doesn't have. That sucks.
Yeah. He's like, I don't have 50. He's like, well, everything you don't have, you'll take 1 and a lash. Yeah. Rough.
A whore comes up. She was just dirty. Had to get cleaned out, thrown in the dungeon.
Oof. Lie though, man. Isn't that like painful?
Well, I
don't know how I don't even know if it would help whatever she's got going on.
I think this is probably the most important one because it shows kind of Randall's like sexism.
He's fucked, man.
Right.
He's
like
awful.
4 of his soldiers got the pox and it's the whore's fault. Right. Like, how did she get the pox? Probably from a soldier. And then she gave it to the other soldier. So like the soldiers are the only ones to blame. The whore is literally just doing her job in this situation. Right? Like seemingly whoring isn't illegal. There's brothels on every fucking corner here.
There's like half like naked ladies early in the chapter, right?
So how is this her fault and and it's kind of like Brienne later it's like the exact same thing, right? Like all these guys are playing this cruel game on Brienne and it's Brienne's fault.
Uh-huh.
It's the same thing. It's like the soldiers got what they got from this whore and it's the whore's fault. And he has her private parts washed out with lies, what he commands here, and have her thrown in the dungeon. I think that would kill you. I'm not a lie.
That's what I'm saying. Lie is not good. Yeah.
Right?
No, it's.
Oh yeah. I think when I was a janitor, I think we would put it on the tile to scrub the floor. Yeah.
You didn't watch Fight Club recently enough. Remember the scene in the kitchen, Nelson, when he puts this? They're making the soap.
They're making bomb soap.
And no, it's soap, and he's put the shit on that guy's hand. I'm pretty sure it was lie.
Oh, that's lie.
And it
where he like kisses
burned
it?
his hand. Yeah, like burned his hand, and like his skin's like boiling and shit. I'm pretty sure that's what that is. It's been a while since I saw that movie.
She's gone.
It's a movie as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's really fucked. This dude is fucked. So
Which again, I think it's funny because we've heard it from Sam's perspective, and now we're kind of seeing it firsthand, like his
ruthlessness.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is something I wanted to definitely touch on earlier. That's kind of why I like this chapter we do get to Sam gets validated here, right? Like we knew Sam was a good dude, and just kind of like maybe not what his dad wanted, but like to actually see his dad here being this
also
awful
the devil
person. Yeah, exactly, and like just like he's like Stannis to 20 essentially, right? Like he's not even like he's going beyond. You have to agree with that, Nelson. I see you thinking about it.
Yeah, I agree with it, and like I'm considering something to tell you. I think that's fine because we've heard enough about him. Like there's like Preston Jacobs. I'm sure you've heard us talk about Preston.
Yeah.
One of his like big theory things. I don't even know if it's a theory, but the thing he says is like he always says that Randall is meant to symbolize toxic masculinity. And like that's kind of why he's like kind of this character in the Brienne story, because Brienne is kind of like,
I mean, he definitely
battling
is
that the whole
toxic
time.
masculine.
He's like, exactly.
Toxically
Right, so
masculine.
to the extreme. So I don't know if it's the same thing as Stannis, where like I don't feel like he's upholding his duty. I feel like he's just upholding these really strict
I just
gender
meant
roles.
rigidness. Yeah.
I feel like he's just more strict towards gender roles. Stannis is more strict towards like the law.
I said,
yeah.
I just meant his rigidity and like this is the way it is, and like you did this thing, so you must pay, like that kind of
you did A, so
not
you
gonna
get
listen.
B.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was getting at.
And while he's giving the whore her punishment, he glances out and sees Brienne. Kind of a weird line. He didn't recognize her, right? Or did he recognize her?
You couldn't see recognition in his face. It was almost like he's disregarding her. Like there's a frown, which kind of tells you he knows who it is.
Yeah.
But there's like such a lack of recognition that it's like like I don't know. I think it's supposed to be demeaning, kind of.
Doesn't have
Okay.
time for her.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
I also think it's in purpose that he looks at Brienne right after the horror story, right when there's more judgments to come. That's why we're kind of paralleling that. Like I
That's
said,
a good point. Good point. And then there's one more guy.
So the next one is somebody from Muton's garrison, and this guy actually was cheating at dice. It sounds like, right?
Yep. Yeah, he was cheating.
He kind of like sticks to it though. Like, oh no, I'm just really good at with these die. Like, all right, throw them up on the table. Like, let me roll them too. Right? That's the only way you could tell if they're really loaded. Right? Is you keep rolling them.
So the guy got stabbed in the hand by a dagger, and basically he's trying to accuse somebody else for stabbing him in the hand. And he's like, well, why'd you get stabbed in the hand? He's like, oh, the guy accused me of cheating at dice and stabbed me in the hand. He's like, well, were you cheating at dice? And he's like, no. And Randall's like, if you cheated at dice, that's basically theft, so you lose a finger. If you lie to me, you'll hang. And the guy's like, well, the dice are lucky for me. They're lucky dice. And Randall's like, okay, I fucking know where this is going.
I know what you mean.
Take a fucking finger. Yeah, exactly.
But that's basically lying. That's kind of lying.
Yeah,
it is.
You're right, but.
And then the other guy gets stabbed in the hand.
No,
that's
they both.
the same guy. The guy who got stabbed in the hand is the guy who's losing a finger. Yeah, and Randall picks the finger.
So the cheater
He
stabbed the other guy in the hand
the guy who,
for calling him a cheater.
No. The guy who cheated got stabbed in the hand, and then he came to the
so
dock.
He's
like,
got
Randall,
two hands stabbed now.
He's going to.
Lord Mooton had an archer, and when he shows up, he had a bandaged hand. And he comes to Randall, and he's like, Randall, this guy stabbed me in the hand. And basically, they're like, why did he stab you in the hand? And
Gotcha.
Like, oh, because he was saying I cheated at dice. And Randall's like, well, were you? And he's like, yeah, kind of. And he's like, okay, well, then you lose a finger too. And so the guy who stabbed him gets nothing.
And get a nail in the other hand.
Oh, I didn't even see that.
I thought the other guy got the nail.
He says, take his little finger. He can choose which hand and nail through the palm for the other. So yeah, I guess you're right.
Oh, yeah.
It is the other
guy
guy
that stabbed him
got
the nail. Yeah,
you're right. I thought he meant for the other hand, but yeah, you're right. It's for the other guy. Okay, that's funny. So I guess he is getting at least a little bit of payback.
He's getting the eye for the eye. Yeah, exactly.
But he's getting his finger cut off.
And yeah, Randall's like, take the rest of the dungeons. We'll deal with them later. We'll deal with them tomorrow.
It's Brienne's turn.
Yep.
Bring her up here.
He's like, what do we owe this honor? Why are you here? He's like, I was sent to look for, and he's like, how are you gonna look for somebody if you don't know their name?
Yeah, she stammered. That was more so like, I'm not gonna tell you who I'm actually looking for, right?
Well, she does eventually, but yeah, at first she didn't want to just come out and say, I'm looking for. She can't say the sister thing. She can't say Sansa, but I guess she does. But yeah, he asked, did you kill Renly pretty quick? Just kind of out of nowhere. She's like, no. And then she realizes, damn, I'm on trial now. Just like everybody else was on trial, getting judged. she thinks like, lie to me. At one point when he's like, who are you looking for? And she thinks like, oh, lie to me and you'll hang. And that's when she decides to say, actually tell him.
Yep.
But yeah, she's like, no, it was sorcery. I never, when talking about Renly, and he's like, you never should have donned mail or buckled on a sword. He's like, you should go back to your father's hall. This is a war, not a ball, not a harvest ball.
This guy sucks.
Yeah, just roll through this part.
She's like, I'm here on behalf of the Iron Throne. Gets the letter out. She gives it to him.
A little boot action.
Boot, exactly.
Boot. Yeah. Look, what about my boot?
Why are you here? Look for Sansa Stark. Like we said, she confesses because she doesn't want to get hung for lying. She also at one point she thought like, oh, if this whole stinking goose thing doesn't pan out, I'm gonna go to the Eyrie.
Yeah, I'm just gonna get a ship.
Yeah, and here he basically tells her, Ice is dead. Some singer pushed her off a mountain.
Yeah. She's probably
Littlefinger's in charge now.
He gives her the old Arya. Sansa's probably up north. Why the fuck would she?
This is part of where, like, these chapters are. I don't want to say fun, but like this is definitely like it's like fuck. Like she was on the right track a couple times. Kind of keeps coming back to her, and then it just she gets knocked off every time. I don't know. That's part of.
Yeah, and now she's kind of come to the conclusion like, well, if it's just Littlefinger up there, Sansa's definitely not up there. It's kind of like where she ends up, and it's like, come on, Brienne, think about that a little bit more. Like, what if Sansa was there before Lysa died or something like that, right? But that's not what she's thinking about. And Randall says that he doesn't think that Littlefinger will be in charge there long. He calls him an up-jump jackanapes and says he's only good for counting coppers, and that if he knows the Lords of the Vale, they're not gonna let that guy be in charge for very long. Which is kind of what we saw from that last Sansa chapter, right? It's like people were coming up to see Robert, and they're like, hey, there's more people gathering that are not happy that you're in charge here, Littlefinger. So,
but he is putting stuff in play to like he has the one guy on his side or whatever he's trying to at least.
Yep, the guy at the bottom of the mountain.
Yeah.
So I think at the end basically he yells at Hyle like, "What are you doing? Shouldn't you be on your gate?" And
he's like, "Yeah, but sir, like, get the fuck back to your gate."
Yeah, and he tells to Brienne, he's like, "Fine, you have the king's letter. Do whatever the fuck you want, but don't come crying to me when you get raped. You're basically asking for it." It's pretty much what he says.
Which it goes along the lines of him just being the worst masculine guy, right?
Yeah.
He was a big gaslighter. I didn't know what that term was, but probably like 2 years ago, gaslighting became a big term.
I still don't quite. I feel like I know it when I see it.
It's like when you pass the blame. Like it's not.
You just make up stuff, right? You're like, no, when it wasn't. When it's not true.
It's just like that line right there. Like you are asking for getting raped.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like you just gaslit her into it was her fault for getting raped.
Yes. Yeah. It's usually exactly placing blame.
Gotcha.
In weird ways, like and kind of convincing somebody
that it's their own fault when it's not. Yeah. Gotcha.
So anyway, this is where he does his half-assed apology. He's like, Hyle, that is. She tells him to go back to the gate. And he's like, it was only a game to pass the time. We meant no harm. And then he's like, Ben died, like Pharaoh and Will Stork. Like he's like, these guys are dead. Like you guys, these guys are dead. They deserve your forgiveness or whatever, which is kind of whack, right? Like, I mean, these guys didn't ever prove anything to her that they were sorry what they were doing.
He doesn't say that. I think you're right. He's implying something along those lines, but he doesn't say they deserve your forgiveness because they're dead. He just says, they're dead.
He said, it was only a game to pass the time. We meant no harm. He hesitated. Ben died, cut down on the Blackwater. Pharaoh too, and Will the Stork. And Mark Mullendore took a wound that cost him half his arm. And like Brienne's like, good, like fuck these people. And this guy's like trying to like gather sympathy for sure. He's only people he mentions here, Nelson, are people that have had ill-fated things happen to him. He doesn't talk about anybody else involved.
I think you're right, and I wish it was more overt because I think that also kind of what I was saying earlier is like this is the only sign of any remorse that he really shows. Is like I agree that it's not clear that he's asking for forgiveness here, and I think that's a problem because he should be. Right, I think he should be more overt about basically saying I'm sorry. This is a, like you said, this is a half-assed I'm sorry. I think it should be a more clear I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. We didn't mean it.
It's almost more of an excuse than an I'm sorry.
That's what I'm trying to say. By the way, is that these people, like he's not asking for forgiveness. He's saying like essentially you should forgive them.
Yeah,
like these awful things happen to them. Like you're still holding this over their head is awful. Or is stupid, but she has every right to, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And he's not addressing that whole part of the problem. And
the next quote here is good, Brienne wanted to say. Good, he deserves it. But she remembered Mullendore sitting outside his pavilion with his monkey on his shoulder and a little suit of chainmail, the two of them making faces at each other. What was it the Catelyn had called them that night at Bitterbridge? The nights of summer? And now it was autumn, and they were falling like leaves. So, again, she's not thinking this out overtly either, but I think she's kind of thinking here, like, yeah, they were huge dickheads, but they're not. That doesn't mean they're bad men. Like, they played a game.
They were people too, right? And this is Brienne's, like, being Brienne though, and like kind
being
of
the
just
better person.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So Lyle's like, all right, I'll take you to the goose. She's like, no, you actually fuck off. She sent Pod to the stable and to find an inn.
Pod does ask. Pod's like observant. He's like, "What's up with Kyle? Like, what did he do to you?" And she's like, "Well, he played a game with me."
Kyle.
Pod thinks his name's Kyle.
Kyle and Kyle's all the same.
All this is like 15 minutes, 20 minutes into this guy being around, and he still doesn't know his name.
Classic douchebag Kyle.
This guy was mean. Had to be a Kyle.
Punched a hole in the drywall.
Jeff said he watched Dark Knight recently. I rewatched Shrek 2 recently. Shrek 2 with Fairy Godmother's like douchebag, like boy toy has like a Kyle shirt. And it's like all bejeweled and it says Kyle on it. I was thinking of Kyle the whole time. Not that you're anything like that. Not that you're anything like that. I was just like,
I don't care if
it's just a Kyle. It's just a Kyle.
I feel like Kyle is like a stereotype, kind of like Karen is, and you don't match this. And you used to in your younger days. You used to match the Kyle stereotype, like a skater punk monster boy. But I feel like not anymore. Now you're like a grown-up beekeeper who like enjoys the woods, like that, which is not the opposite of Kyle.
I mean, I still identify as a
yeah.
punk.
You got some. You're interesting. You got You're like an ogre layers.
Yeah, the monster energy and punching holes in drywall is the Kyle meme. That's exactly. The Kyle meme. Yeah. So
wearing a beanie half off his head.
yeah, exactly. So.
All right. Anyway. So he's like asking, like, all right, Pod, fuck off. We got to the goose. There's 3 Tyroshi men in there, and then there's a girl serving. I mean, you talk about a dive bar. We're there. This is what started the term.
This bar's just a plank across the barrel. This is a Sea of Thieves bar if I ever saw one, Nelson.
We got our Game of Thrones word today, too. This place is down some stairs in a cellar underneath a knacker's barn.
It's got to be an animal.
Great. It's an animal processing facility where they like slaughter animals, cut up the meat, tan the hides, and make glue, like do all of it. Make glue out of the
slaughterhouse, butcher, tanner, all in one.
But it's not just meat. Yeah, it's like all of the meat, everything you can get. So that's probably a pretty stinky place. And this is in the basement of that place. It's not like next door. It's literally underneath.
All the shit's dripping through the floor. Yeah.
So she gets in here and she thinks like, oh, it is a stinky place. It smells like wine and mildew, but there's also a little bit of privy stink and lich yard. So it smells like the toilet and the graveyard as well. So yeah, this place is a stinky spot. I don't know if that's what you would call a dive bar, but
it's the diviest.
Definitely a hole in the wall.
Yeah.
So she got wine. She's like, yo, there's Nimbledick here. Lady's like, he'll be here tonight. And she's like, all right, here's a copper. You nod to me when he gets in. And she obliges.
Yep.
And she sat there, thought about Sansa one more time. Is she at the Vale? Did she go north? Did she go across the seas? We do that whole kind of hula hoop again. Maybe the Vale's not the best place because Lysa's dead.
Yep. And then that's where she thinks back to the game that they played with her.
But like before she says that though, I mean, Sansa was there before Lady Lysa died, right? Like that still isn't just because she's dead doesn't mean that she shouldn't go there.
That she should have knocked on the door and checked.
Like we know obviously. That. So that's kind of the unfair advantage I have here. But yeah, like I mean, she was there before. So
well, I think for George, if he wants Brienne to not actually find Sansa, this is a good excuse to have her not check that, right?
Yeah. I know. I understand, Nelson. I understand it's a plot point, and it's made to make you go, "No, you idiot, go!" Yeah, exactly. Like it's like the horror movie thing, right? So I get it. But
and who knows? Maybe she'll puzzle it out next chapter. So
yeah. So then Nimbledick does show up. Or no, she talks about her time at Renly's.
Yeah, which we've talked about enough. I think we covered it.
There's some names though.
Yeah, we can probably fly through it here.
So we have the names.
Big Ben Bushy was the first one. Sorry, Kyle, what are you going to say?
I was just going to say, like, the summary of this is a bunch of knights are just super nice to her, and they get increasingly nice to her, and it's, like, really awkward because it's, like, nothing she's ever experienced in her entire life, right?
Well, it's like Squid Games, too, right? The pot kept getting bigger.
Well, she doesn't know about that part of it yet. So, but that's really what happens is like, it's like, it starts small and then it gets more and more stuff. And eventually they're like, like everybody's opening doors for her and, riding around with her and all that stuff. But go ahead, Nelson. So it starts with Ben Bushy.
Then it's Sir Edmund Ambrose. And then the third one, Sir Hyle Hunt. I think those are the three here that actually conceived the game, so it makes sense to the first ones. And Hyle Hunt, which is again the guy we've been hanging out with most of the chapter, he gave her a book beautifully illuminated and filled with 100 tales of knightly valor. He brought apples and carrots for her horses and a blue silk plume for her helm. He told her the gossip of the camp and said clever cutting things that made her smile. He even trained with her one day, which meant more than all the rest.
Sounds like she fell for him a little bit.
Well, he's treating her like a knight, like he's bringing carrots for her horse,
And like a friend too.
Well, a friend,
like not just a knight. Like you should bring probably the carrot to your own horse, not everybody else's horse. But
he's like bringing a plume for her helmet. That's not something you would normally do for a woman, right? A woman doesn't have a helmet. You don't bring carrots and apples to the woman's horse.
I think he's just bringing fancy stuff. No, I think I agree with Jeff.
He trained with her in the yard.
He's flirting. It's flirting 101, Nelson.
But she said she says the reason she likes him the most is because he's treating her in the role that she wants to be, not as a woman. Like Kyle said, other people are opening doors and sitting next to her at the feast and want to dance with her. She doesn't give a fuck about that. She cares about being
the training mattered the most. You're right. I will agree with
that. Again, that's why it's flirting 101. You got to know your subject. Know your personnel. KYP. I try to tell you this.
Yeah, exactly. Which I think again is interesting.
If your girl doesn't like comic books, don't take her to Spider-Man 2.
I think it's fucked up for Hyle because clearly he's not treating her like that this chapter, right? This chapter, he's like, what are you doing in male? You're a woman, blah, blah, blah. Exactly, which it proves its show, exactly. The next ones we get is Richard Farrow, Hugh Beesbury, Sir Mark Mullendore, Will the Stork, and then there was a man named Owen Inchfield who seized her one night and pressed a kiss upon her, and she knocked him arse backward into a cook fire. Inchfield, this last name sound familiar. We've only heard of one other Inchfield.
I remember it, but I can't. I'm not going to place it.
Sir Lucas Inchfield was like
is that an old? This is an old, right?
He was the number one knight and the guy who's supposed to marry the Red Widow if she was unmarried.
Yeah. I was gonna say it was Dunk and Egg time.
Dunk kills him in the fight in the stream at the end of the last Dunk and Egg book.
Okay.
So again,
he was tall. He was the other tall guy.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. They called him the Long Inch because Lucas Inchfield, but he was actually huge. Exactly. So I love the Dunk Brienne parallels. They had the same sigil. They had the same sigil on the shield. She had knocked this guy on his ass. Dunk literally killed the only other Inchfield we've ever heard of. So, yep, cool. And then basically she's like Kyle said, she's like, why are you guys being nice to me? She wants to scream it to the heavens. She's like, there's can't followers here that are prettier than me. There's feasts going on in this castle every night with maids and lovely ladies. Like, why are all these guys who've never been nice to me? And she's like, I found out one day when Randall called me to his tent. Little Dick on it overheard some knights laughing. They had a wager. 3 of the younger knights had started it. Ambrose, Bushy, and Hyle Hunt of his own household. As word spread through the camp, however, others had joined the game. Each man was required to buy into the contest with a golden dragon, the whole sum to go to whoever claimed her maidenhead. And basically he's like, the pot was getting too big. People were going to start doing some unchivalrous things.
I mean, that's already happened. That's what Inchfield did, right?
Exactly.
Like, you're gonna get raped, essentially, and not to laugh about it, but that's really where he was like, this is going really south, and you could tell he was not happy about it being his own house, right? I think that's the real problem, unfortunately.
Well, I think what, again, it's not clear in the chapter, but I think if you think about it, it becomes kind of clear. What is he mad about? Is he afraid that Brienne's gonna get raped?
No, she's bringing shame to his house, that his house is turning into these rapers and these thieves, or not thieves, but gamers or whatever you want to
exactly. Know. She's going to make his men dishonor themselves.
Yes.
And it's not that they're dishonorable, it's that she caused it, right? Exactly. It's her fault, just like it was the whore's fault, right? So again, she thinks she owes him a debt because, he saved her from this game. He wasn't trying to save her. He was trying to save his own men's honor. So again, I think it just kind of shows, that's not clear, but I think that's, if you take a second and think about it, like, he doesn't give a fuck about Brienne. Like, that's the only thing he cares about. So, I don't know. I mean, I guess he does say when he sends her off, like, if you get raped, don't come crying to me, which at that point, it's not necessarily impacting his own men, but I don't know. I don't think he's trying to look out for Brienne at all here. I think
He's
it's more
not.
of a So, and that's basically what it said. Is like, hey, we're in a war camp. The only place a woman has in a war camp is as a camp follower. So if you're here, that's the role you're playing. So it's your fault. She's like, they're knights. They're honorable knights. He's like, yeah, but you're tempting them. Like, what do you expect? Is kind of what he says. He's like, you should go home and try and convince your dad to get you a husband. Like, women are supposed to bear their battle. She's like, I want to fight, and he's like, your battle is in the birthing bed. That's where women's battle belongs, which is interesting because Cersei has said this. I think Cersei has potentially told this to Sansa before.
I mean,
which doesn't mean it's
she can
right,
be-
but it's
yeah, she can be toxic, like buy into toxic masculinity.
I mean, is that toxic masculine? Like, that's a tough thing that women go through, right? Like, that's kind of like.
But she's, I mean, to just boil it down to that's all they're.
I don't know if that's
able
what
to do.
Cersei was trying to do. I think she was trying to more wear it as a badge of pride, like, because I think at the moment she was the Battle of Blackwater was going on, and Sansa was having her first period, and she's like, they bleed out there, you'll bleed in here. This is our role. So you're right that she's kind of giving Sansa the role, but I think there's also some pride in it. It's weird, but there's a one of the first episodes of House of the Dragon. They have a tournament going on while a mother is going through a pretty brutal birth, and they do this like a lot of quick cuts back and forth. And again, I don't think like you don't have to say. I'm not trying to say that's their only role, but I think it is a kind of like a. I think that women shouldn't be afraid to take pride in, like being able to.
Yeah, and I wasn't saying that.
I know. I just felt
okay.
like you were trying to come at me the other way, and
I wasn't.
okay.
I was just saying that Cersei could believe that too. Is all I was saying.
Okay.
Just because she's a woman doesn't mean that.
Yes,
that's
true. And I think you're kind of right on that. Cersei kind of has said multiple times, like, I can't hold a sword because I'm not Jaime, because I'm not a man. So she does kind of abide by the rules that you don't have to. Brienne's proving you don't have to. So, but yeah. So then Dick Crab comes in. Is there anything else? No, that's it.
Not really.
Dick Crab comes in.
Dick Krabs comes in as he's all into Dick Crab too.
Yeah, fuck this guy. This guy's annoying. I hate him already.
Dick Crab
I think
he talks in the third person.
Yeah, Nimble Dick's here. I heard you fooled a fool. Maybe I did, pretty much. And what are you gonna pay me, right? So she's putting money on the thing.
A little bit more for each little piece of info. Starts with a copper, right?
Well, he's like, who wants to know? And she's like, Robert does. She puts on her silver stag because it has Robert's face.
It's Robert's
Okay,
head on
it
it.
started with the stag.
Yeah. I think the one thing interesting to note about Dick, I think, about his appearance is he wore a faded, torn doublet from which some lord's badge had been ripped. So
he got booted?
He either got booted or
he just got an old suit somehow and thrifted
or,
it, or
like, who's an enemy of like, say he's wearing a Stark badge. You wouldn't want to wear a Stark badge in Maidenpool today. So maybe he ripped off a badge of just somebody who wouldn't agree with where he's currently at or something. Or he might have got booted too, but like I think it's an interesting note that his badge has been
I didn't
torn
mean
off.
booted. I meant if I said that, I meant like he looted this off of somebody like that, yeah, and
Gotcha.
and stole it, and now it's his kind of thing. That's what he's wearing. Or I meant thrifted. Is that? I thought that's what I said. Like, you got this secondhand doublet.
Gotcha. I don't know if it's I wouldn't call it a parallel, but there was a time for a while when Arya had escaped Harrenhal when she was wearing a Bolton sigil, and she came across like multiple people who were like, wait a minute, are you a Bolton?
Yeah.
And she's like, no, I was a servant there, I'm just wearing this. And I think that's probably I'm thinking it could be a similar situation where
For sure, that's the closest thing you ever do on an ID back then.
Yeah.
So, or in these times.
So they're doing the bribe thing. Robert wants to know, what's the deal? You fooled a fool. And he's like, was there a girl with him?
Actually, there was 2 girls. Was there? He never really confirmed gender. He just said there was.
He's like, I didn't see him.
He said there was.
Yeah.
He wanted passage for 3.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that could be not Florian, right? Yeah, no, Florian. No,
Dantos?
Dantos. Dantos is Florian.
He's dead.
Yeah, but it could have been Dantos, Sansa, and Littlefinger, right? Like that was who was with Dantos and Sansa? Tyrion? No.
Well,
just Dantos.
What you were thinking last time was the fool that this guy was talking about could have been Patchface. I think you were thinking Patchface was a potential. If you're trying to find 3 people related to Patchface, I would think Patchface, Edric Storm.
Yeah, and Shireen. And that's right. That's right.
I can't
that's
imagine
right,
there's any way Stannis will let Shireen go. But I'm just throwing it out. I'm just trying to remind you of what you said last time.
Yep. We haven't seen him up at the wall though, or with well, I guess they wouldn't have went to the wall.
We have not seen Patchface or Edric, but we saw Edric kind of Davos kind of helped him get away. So yeah, makes sense. We don't know. Have we seen jraijin? I don't know.
Not lately.
Since Stannis has been to the wall?
Not really. That's what I'm saying. But anyway,
Okay.
I don't know.
We haven't heard shit
I was
about
on
that
I completely was on the, oh, this is obviously Dantos and Sansa and somebody is where I
We
was
saw
at today.
Dantos get shot with a crossbow.
I know, but that was after like they were getting to the boat.
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
This is
You're
when he
saying-
was trying to get the boat.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is when he was reserving his Uber.
But I forget who he is with. Like, and Kettle Black was already on the boat, so I don't think there was a third person there. That's all I'm kind of getting at here.
Well, yeah,
It's like-
Dantos and Sansa climbed down the cliff and met Kettle
Yeah.
Black. That was also at King's Landing, and Dick claims here this is in a place called Crack Hall.
yeah, it was at King's Landing. Yeah, you're right. I'm back to Patchface. Go ahead.
Yep. So she keeps paying him.
More money. Yep.
Yep.
Where are we going?
This fool was afraid of Tarly's men. That's why he came to this guy, and he was going to take him to a smuggler's cove, that's where they would get the ship.
Yep. And the reason he fooled a fool is because even though he is saying told this fool he's going to help him by sending him to a smuggler's cove, it's a cove no smugglers have been to in 30 years that basically had
Yeah,
a
it
ruined
is a
castle
smuggler's cove, but it's an old ass cove
that no one
Smuggler's
uses.
Cove.
So he's going there and no one's going to find him. Is kind of what Dick's implying.
Sent him on his way. I got his money, and here we are.
Yeah. And Brienne's like, whoa, those are both my sisters. I need both of them back. Like, we need to go get them now for a dragon.
Yeah. Or he's like, yeah, at some point Dick's like, oh, a stag would never find where I sent them, but a dragon might. So she's like, gives him the dragon. He starts talking. He says, the whispers. She's like, do you know Clarence Crabb? And she's like, no, who the fuck's Clarence Crabb? Like, oh, you don't know? Like, how did the fuck do you not know this guy? He was 8 feet tall. He was a badass. He would just kill people, cut off their heads, and then he was so big that he had to ride around. He could throw pine trees half a mile. He had to ride around on aurochs. He would cut off heads, and his
See that
wife
mountain over there? I throw this football clear there.
he would cut off people's heads and have his wife, who was a woods witch, kiss them, and then they would come back to life. But because they were only heads, they couldn't talk very loud because they didn't have lungs. So they were kind of whispering, and then because they were heads, they had nothing else to do, so they wouldn't shut up. So they just kept basically had a bunch of whispering heads all the time. And he's like, he killed some knights, he killed some wizards, he killed a king of Duskendale one time. Just think that's interesting because Brienne was in Duskendale a few chapters ago, and we heard her talking about the Darks and the Darklands, who were this previous family who, before the Targaryens came, would have been kings, right? We don't know, we won't have any names, but that's probably what they're implying here. And he's like, yeah, so basically he would have all these heads in his castle, and that's why they called it the Whispers, because it was this castle full of heads giving him counsel, and they just wouldn't shut up, and they're whispering because they don't have lungs to talk. But it's been ruined for 1,000 years. This guy's old news, so I sent him to this castle, this ruins, basically, which is now a smuggler's cove, but no one uses it anymore.
Yep.
And he's like, I
And
can show you where it is.
For 10 dragons.
For 10, exactly. She's like, 10, go fuck yourself.
Fuck
That's
off.
crazy.
That's a fucking fortune. Yeah.
Yeah. 6 dragons if we find my sisters. 2 if all we find is a fool. Nothing is what you get if nothing's what we find. And he's like, 6 is good, which is should be a good sign to her that he's confident that we're gonna find the sisters.
He agreed too quick in her mind, though. Scared her.
That's exactly.
Yeah,
that's
I
what she
think
thinks.
it's
Too
like,
quick.
oh fuck, I'm getting led into a trap here too, and I think he would have taken less as the other side of it as well.
Should have haggled him down more.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she thinks something sus, grabs his hand. She's like, don't play me false. You might think because I'm a woman or whatever, I'm easy to play. I'm not going to be easy. Don't try me. And she lets him go. He rubs her wrist. He's like, that hurt. And she's like, I'm sorry, but I need to find my sister. And she's like, yeah, before somebody gets in her slit. Don't worry. We'll get it done.
To be fair, he did say something about like his sister getting. She was a great person until somebody some knight took her maidenhead and ruined her.
I don't
right?
think he was talking good about his sister ever.
She had knobby knees.
Oh, maybe I misremembered then.
She had knobby knees until she grew tits, and then some Lord Knight's son got between her legs, and last I saw, she was off to King's Landing to earn a living on her back or something like that.
Fair enough. I was wrong. I thought he was trying to say like, yeah. Well, I mean, I think he is trying to say that like, yeah, all these fucking knights are assholes. Everybody's a monster out here. You gotta
That's
watch
fair.
yourself.
That's part
right?
of it, yeah.
And even he is though. So that's where I'm at on him. I don't like him.
Yeah.
He's
so
slimy, very clearly slimy. Right.
we're going to Cracklaw Point, Kyle. What do you think?
I mean, I've seen that place on the map a whole bunch. I'm excited
Should have
about
had a
it.
picture ready.
It is a cool spot on the map. The fact that Nelson doesn't have a map ready is just...
I'll put one in the YouTube right now.
Yeah, it was just intriguing, essentially. I mean, she's kind of heading in the right direction to get to the Erie. I don't know, man. I feel like she's gonna be wandering this whole book is what I think is gonna happen here. So I do think this is gonna be a fight. I think she's getting led into a trap here for sure.
Dick versus Brienne.
I don't know about Dick.
1v1.
I think it's like Dick's dudes, right? Like,
Dick's
I think
got
he's
some
like
guys.
a crew.
Wouldn't that be a great symbolic fight though? Brienne versus
Yeah.
Dick.
Brienne versus the Dick.
For all the girls.
All the single ladies. All the single ladies.
That's it?
All right. Anything else to say? That's the end of the chapter. Kyle, got
That's
anything
all
else?
I got, man. I got nothing
Ended
else.
on Kyle or Nelson's single ladies.
That'll get ended. Hopefully,
It's
edited out.
karaoke. Not if we
Too
mention
many
a whole
sour
bunch.
monkeys.
The single ladies
Single
song
ladies,
that Nelson
single
was singing a
ladies,
minute ago.
I'll say it in the spoiler section, like in a weird spot. That
yeah, you got to call it back. Yeah, you can't cut it out.
All right, we'll see Kyle in the next one for what is it? Samwell 2.
Ooh, I didn't actually look ahead. It was one of the times
get a
where
little
you didn't
Tarly
have
stuff,
to.
you know?
Did you look ahead, Kyle? Did you turn the page?
I mean, I just saw it was Samuel. Yeah, I did see that.
I do feel like we're getting to the point of the book where kind of the intro shit's over. Like Brienne's story set up. We know what Sam's story's kind of
I'll be
going
the
to
judge
be.
of that.
We've kind of got our new characters. We got the situation. We know what's going on in the Iron Islands. There's going to be some type of Kingsmouth.
Oh, yeah,
we
that's
know
right.
what's going
Sam's
on in
going to-
Dorne. There's some Marcella conflict. Like, I feel like we kind of got what's going to be going on in the book now. So it's kind of like, all right, let's see it happen.
Sam's going to be a maester, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like he's got some big shit going on here. That'll be interesting. I'm excited for that.
But
Ooh.
first, he's sent to Bravos. John sent him to Bravos on a Night's Watch ship because they're not going to send a Night's Watch ship to Old Town. So go to Bravos and from there find your own ship. So that's the first leg of Sam's journey. Well, East Watch, then to Bravos. But the first sentence is the sea made Samuel Tarly green sick. So spoiler, he's on the boat.
All right, cool.
We'll see Kyle in that one for Samuel 2. We'll see the rest of you guys in the spoiler section.
Bye.
Bye, Kyle.
Later, nerds.
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert!
Bye, Kyle.
Bye, Kyle. Thanks for hanging out with us.
See you on the next one for Samuel 2. Now, on the spoiler section. Jeff, what we got?
The only thing I think I have is that the Wood Witch. It's got to be the same Wood Witch, right?
What do you mean?
Arya's Wood Witch.
No, this Wood Witch is from 1,000 years ago. I don't think we know this
Nah.
Wood Witch.
No, we do. It's that girl. That's the girl that's kissing Arya.
You're talking about the Ghost of High Heart.
Yeah.
Maybe I doubt it though.
I thought we would have been. I thought we were gonna be. I thought you were gonna turn to me like, yeah, that's her.
I don't know if I've heard that. I mean, I could think about it more. I'm trying to think like how long could the Ghost of High Heart really have been around for? Theoretically, she was like in her younger years in the time of Duncan the Small, which is Egg's son. But there's a time when Leaf, who's the Children of the Forest, talks to Bran. She says something about like, we've been walking your lands for a long time.
We don't know if she's not human. Like, say she is a Children of the Forest.
She's probably a child. Yeah, no, I think the Ghost of High Heart is probably a child
so
of the forest.
like we don't know their life expectancy. Like they could be like Yoda. You know?
Exactly. I think that's pretty much exactly what I think. Yeah, exactly. For Children of the Forest. Well, what they say is we don't multiply as much as you. Like basically, rabbits are to humans as humans are to Children of the Forest, right? Like you know how there's like people say like, oh, they reproduce like rabbits,
like rabbits,
or you'll have 2 rabbits, and then in like 4 weeks you'll have 20 rabbits. I don't think that's actually true, but I feel like that's kind of like the meme.
Okay.
Right, that's how we look to Children of the Forest. Like they live over way longer time spans and have like one or 2 children per 400 years or whatever. And here we are having like 7 generations of 4 children per generation every 100 years, right? So I think that's kind of how they see us. So, but yeah, exactly, which means the Ghost of High Heart could have been.
So it means I'm right. It means
you could be right. I'd have to think about it more. I have to do a little more research. We will hear more about Clarence Crabb in the next Brienne chapter, which I think is them going to. I listened to it recently on audiobook. I think it's them going to and getting to and doing the whole Shagwell, Pig, Timian thing at the Whispers. So that's what the 3 people are: Shagwell, Pig, and Timian, and they're at the Whispers.
She gets trapped, right? There's people waiting for her.
They're not waiting for no. They're not waiting for her. Everything that Dick Crab said's true. He told a fool, go here. It was Shagwell. He was taking Pig and Timian, not two girls, who were two other of the sellswords.
Have we met Shagwell?
Yeah, Shagwell, it's funny because one of the first things Shagwell does is we first see him when Arya does her weasel soup. And he is jumping around holding two cut off heads.
Right.
Making two heads talk to each other. He's like, Weasel, how'd you die? And the other one's like, Weasel Soup.
Yeah.
So he's the one who comes up with the whole Weasel Soup name. I think it's definitely an intentional that he's making two heads talk. And then
so
Brienne
he took these three
him.
people to a broken castle, and they're just sitting around. They're just sitting around.
Basically, they're there. Yeah, exactly. I think.
Why didn't they leave?
I don't know. I'm sure we'll find out. But exactly, Brienne gets there, and they're still there. It's Pig, Timian, and Shagwell. They're there.
I thought there was people in like the trees and shit that like try to like.
They're in a ruined castle and they kind of fight. I think in the Godswood, there's at least a weirwood tree where they fight.
Who do they fight?
Brienne fights Shagwell, Pig, and Timian. They kill Dick. Maybe I shouldn't have spoiled that for you. They kill Dick. Podrick, I think, throws a rock and helps out, and then Brienne just pops off with Oathkeeper.
Why is Shagwell mad at Brienne?
Shagwell is one of the people that wanted to rape Brienne, and Jaime got that ended by convincing whoever.
Shagwell the Fool?
Shagwell the Fool was a brave companion, yeah, and all of them were brave companions, and they wanted to rape Brienne, and Jaime, when he did the Sapphire thing...
So Shagwell did have beef with Brienne.
Yeah, he's basically like, I'm going to rape you and all this shit, and he didn't get to because Jaime pulled the Sapphire prank. So he knows her. They all know her.
Maybe I didn't know that Shagwell was a fool back when we got introduced to the Brave Companions.
Yeah, so that's where all the history comes from. That's who the three people are. That's where they're going next Brienne chapter.
I hate Brienne's storyline. I really do.
Some people hate it because it's just not important. It's not related to the rest of the story. As a standalone story, I think it's kind of cool. Again, like a lot of the stuff we talked about this chapter, you can tell there's a theme, right? The whole toxic masculine Brienne overcoming that.
There's not many chapters that don't have a theme to it.
Oh, I know. I just mean, I think if you take I think if you were to just read Brienne chapters, like in isolation, I think there's like 8 of them. It'd
be the worst book ever.
I don't think you'd hate it. I think it makes more sense. I think you hate it because it's so isolated and so unrelated to everything else that's going on that every time we get to one, it's like, oh my God, this is just a waste of a week. It's going to take another week till we get to something that actually matters to the main Game of Thrones story.
She doesn't even like do cool shit like dunk along the way.
She kills all 3 of them next chapter, I think.
She will. We'll have to get there.
I think that'll be next chapter. But next.
So you're saying if it was read just as a Dunk and Egg novella, it would be a better story?
I think if you read it all back to back, it would read similar to a Dunk and Egg novella. Yeah, probably.
Would I like it as much?
I think you'd probably like it more than because I think you'd like reading all the Brienne chapters back to back to back to back to back without reading the other ones.
I would like it more, not more than Dunk.
No, not more than Dunk. You'd like it more than getting them one off every 12
You've
chapters.
You've never cried during a Brienne chapter.
So I think I have one time, and I think there's a parallel here, and I didn't actually write it down in my spoiler until Kyle was talking about it. In the end of this book, so she gets to this inn. I think it's the inn at the crossroads. Willow is this little girl who's kind of running all these other little girls who are running it. Gendry's there, right? She gets to this, and Gendry's there.
I recall that.
She goes out to talk to Gendry because I think she's realizing who he is. She mistakes him for Renly for a second, and I think she's like, "Oh fuck, you're related to somebody." And as she goes out to talk to him at the forge, I think it's like it's really raining, and then some people ride up, and Gendry is like, "Oh, it's our people. Don't worry about it," thinking it's Barrack's men and Lem and those guys, but it's not. It's Rorg in the Hound's helm because that's the other thing we hear about a lot of this chapter is the Hound's around. It's Rorg.
I knew that.
And I think that's why we're hearing it a lot in this Brienne chapters because that's kind of the end of her story of this Dunk and Egg Brienne story. It's her and Rorg fighting. So, and what happens at the end of that is she shows up and she looks, all those people show up and she's like, it's just me. Like, I'm the only one here. It's all these little girls in this inn. Gendry, who doesn't really even have a sword in his hand. He has a hammer, doesn't really understand what's going on. She thinks, I have no chance and no choice. And then she like pulls her sword. So like in that quote, it's like she knows she isn't going to beat this 12-on-1. But it's what she has to do anyway. It's like, that's what a good knight would do. So again, it's not, she doesn't say that here, but the guards take the farmer's wife. There's 12 of them, all with halberds, and she pulls her sword. Like, they all have their spear points to her throat, and she...
No. Brienne is badass. I'm not...
Again, I didn't even write it down until there was something that either you or Kyle said while we were reading through that, and I was like, damn, this is definitely a parallel to Brienne not caring about, like, everybody in this book cares about what's the outcome, right? Am I going to win this?
Or their well-being.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, what's the possible outcome first? Which I feel like is probably the smart thing. Brienne is just like a by the book. What does a true knight do?
Yeah.
And I'm doing that. Like, it doesn't matter if I'm going to die immediately because of that. I'm going to do it. And it just like she kind of have been lucking out of some of these situations. If Hyle doesn't show up, she's fucked.
She gets captured in that 12v1, right? At the end.
She loses. She's about to, Biter bites off half her face. She kills Biter. And then I think the only reason she survives the rest of them is because Lem and company do show up right afterwards. And basically, when Rourke shows up, they're like, they're on our heels. Give us fresh mounts. We need to get the fuck out of here. I think is kind of what they're saying.
And then they take her to Cat.
Then they take her to Cat. Exactly. And that's the end of the Brienne storyline. But again, I think the main point is that she had no chance, or she knows, she had no chance and no choice.
Right.
Which means like it's not even a second thought for her. It's like, I got to stand up for these people.
Yeah, I mean, it's fight or flight. Right, like she could have ran. Like they probably still would have got her.
She couldn't have. That's why there's no choice. Because there's Gendry in a
she
full of innocent girls.
She could have bailed on them.
That's why the quote is in that chapter. She had no chance and no choice.
I understand what you're saying. She did. She did.
Oh, you got you. Physically, she could have.
She did have a choice. She could have tried to run. She probably might not have gotten away still.
Not in her mind.
She could have. Not in her personal brain. There was of course.
Exactly.
Of course she would.
That was a physical possibility, but in her mind, that wasn't even a question, which is why it's no choice. Which is
like a lesser knight, a lesser person leaves them and
Yes.
doesn't think twice about it. Absolutely.
Just like at the gate here. Yeah. So the only other point I had is, and this is a deep one, and it's Preston related. I got this one from Preston.
Shout out Preston.
I haven't watched the video on it recently, but I guess this is something that stuck with me from a Preston video from years ago. There's a galleass, a galley, and a cog.
A 2-cog thing, right? Or something like that? Yeah.
A 2-masted cog, which is weird because when I looked up a cog, every definition said it's a 1-masted ship. So this said a 2-masted cog, which that just doesn't make sense.
Didn't exist.
But that's interesting because basically what Preston says is we see these 3 ships a few times. And the last time we see them, we hear that they are basically riding around accompanying Tycho Nestoris. I know you remember who Tycho Nestoris is, so why don't you tell everybody who Tycho Nestoris is, Jeff?
It's that person from Mir.
Close. He's from Bravo. So he's the representative of the Iron Bank who goes to meet with Stannis. And he's basically like, hey, Stannis, the Lannisters pretty much said, fuck you, when we said, hey, you got to pay your loans back. So as long as you're promised to make the gold flow, we're going to do the Iron Bank thing and back you because fuck Cersei, she's not paying us. And when he shows up at Eastwatch, Carter Pike says, when he came in a galleass, a galley, and a cog.
Interesting.
So we hear the galleass, the galley, and the cog are here. When in the Dance of Dragons book, which is I think when we're going to hear this because it's a Jon chapter, that's where we hear that, I think, where Carter Pike tells Jon Tycho came in a galleass, a galley, and a cog. Before we hear that in Dance, though, we hear in a Davos chapter, when Davos, I think, goes to White Harbor, he sees a galleass, a galley, and a cog. Again, it's not important in the main series yet, but I think the Preston video basically is implying this all has to do with the Littlefinger debt scheme. Because Braavos is basically calling in loans, right, from all these lords. And what we see with Littlefinger is Littlefinger's buying up debt. So basically these lords who need to pay back the Iron Bank, he's giving that, like, it's like the bank's like, hey, you need to give me your $10,000 loan back. Littlefinger's like, hey, I'll give you a $10,000 loan so you can pay that loan back. So they're still in debt. They're just in debt to him now, not them.
Yeah.
So I think that's, again, I haven't watched it in years, but I think that's kind of the premise of this. I do think it's cool, though. Again, it seems intentional. I did look it up. Like I did some more research.
Ships.
It's quoted, and Carter Pike straight up says he comes in a galleass, a galley, and a cog. I think it's intentional
in that order.
Cool. And what Brienne says is she's like, oh, I looked out into the harbor and I saw a galleass, a galley, and a cog, and a bunch of fishing ships. So it's like that is all she sees. So I think it's definitely intentional. I thought it was kind of cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's definitely something I would not pick up on.
Just wanted to mention it. And I don't think it'll be important again until the Dance of Dragons. Because again, this is one of the things that George was writing Dance and Feast at the same time. So at this part, he thinks that we're going to be reading that Davos chapter where he sees the galaxy
in 3 chapters, maybe.
Exactly, shortly. And then the John one, maybe 5 chapters later. So, but then he has to split it, and it makes it harder to find. But like I always think that things are cooler the further they're spread out. So it also, to me, kind of makes it cooler because these are now 1,000 pages apart instead of 200.
You got to be looking a little bit deeper.
Exactly. So hats off to Preston for that one. Again, I don't know exactly what video it is, but
so much smarter than you.
Definitely from not an original thought from me. Yeah, that's all I had for this one. Anything else from you?
No, let's get on out of here.
All right, I'll see the rest of you guys in the next one for Samuel 2. Bye-bye.
Bye.